Hi guys, Mike Reviews It All here with MMA Live at 5. Sorry it was a few minutes after there. This fucking YouTube Live keeps on giving me issues with the orientation lock on my iPhone. Apparently they're saying, Young David says it's not something about the iPhone, it's something with this goddamn YouTube Live. I'm about to knock some motherfuckers out though. Thanks for tuning in to MMA Live at 5. I'm sorry I'm late. I was actually 10 minutes early. Could not get the fucking orientation lock off the goddamn phone. So, sorry about all the swearing to start this, but that was super frustrating when you've been waiting all day to do a show and then you end up with some bullshit like that. It really kind of throws you off. But we're going to go ahead with this anyways, obviously. How's everybody doing out there? Hopefully everybody's coming in. Obviously I went live for a minute ago and it didn't stick, but I'm here now and we're going to have a great show. I picked up this product. I've been into MMA for a long time. I want to talk a little bit about how I got into MMA. Starting this, I was bullied as a kid when I switched schools. I switched elementary schools in about 4th grade to a school that was predominantly Hispanic, about 80 to 90% Hispanic. My family was also very poor, so I had to deal with that. And so I got into martial arts because I had to defend myself. I was literally getting jumped in 4th grade, getting thrown down and kicked and beaten by 20 kids as 100 others cheered on. And that was not a fun experience for me. So I started to fight back after about 2 weeks of that at about 10, 11 years old. I decided to punch the biggest bully in the school, just walk up to him and punch him in the face. And I learned that worked pretty well. You know, that did the job there. So I still got into some scuffles, a lot of scuffles. All the way through elementary school, into middle school. Not as many people mess with me, but I ended up with a huge temper, and I was triggered, you know, very easily. As a kid, I probably had some autism or some bullshit, how they would diagnose it nowadays. But I got into boxing, and I got into martial arts videos, and I got into Bruce Lee. And here today, I have a product to review at the beginning of this. It's called Bruce Tea. And it's actually, it says black tea, natural flavors, blend by Bruce Lee. Obviously, Bruce Lee's not alive anymore, but it says JKD, ginseng, royal jelly, and honey. Is decaffeinated, but BruceLeeTea.com. Basically, I bought it for the cool bottle because it was 79 cents. And I like Bruce Lee. It says shake well. So let's see how this tastes. So 90 calories in it. Water, cane sugar, honey, black tea, citric acid, natural flavors, royal jelly, ginseng root extract. And that's the only ingredients there. So let's try this. Well, it doesn't taste very good. I don't think Bruce Lee would approve. But you know, I'm glad I bought it for the cool bottle. I got all Bruce Lee's books. I've had all his movies, everything. Why not buy some Bruce Lee tea? Got figurines on the Christmas tree, Bruce Lee statue, Bruce Lee posters, and list goes on and on. But I'm going to go with something a little tastier here, and this is the Widmer Drifter Pale Ale. Let's try this. I haven't tried this. This was on sale at my work though for $5.99 a 6-pack, which is a really good deal for beer here in Washington State for sure. It was a good sale, and you know, I like my microbrews. Widmer, I've liked everything else by them, so let's try this. Very flavorful. I can taste the hops in it. I like that. I like some hoppy beer. I like Mac and Jacks, like some other, you know, hoppier beers like that. So, God, still nobody's live. I suck this week. Sorry for being late, guys. If you watch this later, you can bitch me out down below in the comments. But I'm just going to enjoy drinking some beer here, and I had a preview video out. If you haven't seen it already, you need to look it up for the Aaron Pico fight coming up on Bellator 192. And, you know, a bad thing for MMA fans, a bad thing for Bellator, that UFC decided to have their flagship event in the heavyweight division for probably the last couple of years. Francis Ngannou versus Stipe Miocic, of course, on the same date as Bellator's probably biggest event with Rory McDonald versus Lima, and then Rampage Jackson and Chael Sonnen as the co-main event. So that's some bad news for Bellator, but what they did is they did something really smart. Is they decided to have their prelims start at 7 o'clock, then they decided to have their main event start at 9 o'clock. So what's awesome about that is as soon as the UFC fight cast that we'll be doing ends, I'll switch over to Bellator, and hopefully we catch those two main fights so we can catch all UFC 220 main fights on Bellator, have an even awesomer night. So that's pretty incredible. What's going on in the world of MMA right now? Stipe Miocic on several avenues. He was on the MMA Hour with Ariel Helwani, of course, and you know, we talked a little bit about the preferential treatment that the UFC is giving Francis Ngannou. Obviously, he's not super happy about it. He's not a guy that talks a lot of smack, but you know, he said out and out, yeah, I think the UFC wants Francis Ngannou to win, and he says they want him to be his, you know, their flagship heavyweight, and why that is, he doesn't know, but you know, people forget in this promo, yeah, Francis Ngannou's got a lot of power. He lifted Alistair Overeem off his feet. He knocked out Andrei Arlovski pretty devastating. But you can go back a couple of years and you see Stipe Miocic beat both those guys, arguably closer to their prime. Then he knocked out, you know, one of the toughest fighters in the world, heavyweight champion Fabricio Verdum. First round, just came in, counter him, boom. I mean, Stipe Miocic is an animal. He's got incredible footwork. He's got wrestling. And he's got more complete game than Francis Ngannou. Now, can he avoid those power shots? Can he avoid those winging hooks, those uppercuts, everything that Francis Ngannou comes with and can catch you with? We'll see. You know, we'll see. That there's no guarantee to that. He could obviously catch him right on the chin, but Stipe Miocic comes in as the champion or underdog. I feel that is a bit disrespectful, as he said, but he has never a problem with it. He says he kind of likes coming in as an underdog, and I think that's kind of scary for Francis Ngannou, to be honest. Facing Stipe Miocic as an underdog. Francis Ngannou, I'm a big fan, don't get me wrong. It's not his fault. Homeless 3 years ago. The way that he grew up, the way that he's trained in the UFC Institute, and how far he has come so quickly, it's hard to be prouder of a fighter. And that guy's amazing. But I don't know if he's underestimating Stipe or if he's just trying to sell a fight here. But you know, we'll see. I keep on getting closer to the screen because I'm hoping somebody's on. Nobody's on right now, so you guys might have to watch this later. But what's going on with Conor McGregor and the talk there? Dana White says, of course, he's going to strip him by March if he doesn't defend. And then Conor and Khabib Nurmagomedov both, you know, hinting at a fight against each other. There was hints again that it would be in Russia, which I honestly don't think that's going to happen at all. But how unfair would that be to Tony Ferguson? First, you have Tony Ferguson. Thanks for coming on. Who's over there? How's it going? First, you have Tony Ferguson fight for the interim title against Kevin Lee, though. He wins it. He's the interim champion. What's up, Mitchell? How's it going, man? I don't know if you've seen, I was just talking about Conor McGregor and Khabib Nurmagomedov's been going back and forth against each other in the media, and Tony Ferguson's the interim championship. He won it fair and square against Kevin Lee. How many people is Tony Ferguson going to have to beat to get to a friggin' title shot? You're going to give him an interim championship and then possibly give Khabib the title shot? Yes, Khabib's performance against Edson Barboza was superior. It was fantastic. You know, major props to him. But Tony Ferguson earned that fight. You can't just give interim championships to people and then give the championship title, you know, the championship match to somebody else. That doesn't make any sense. And we don't know if that's what's going to happen, but that's what's been hinted by both Conor McGregor and kind of Khabib and possibly Dana a little bit. But, you know, like I said, Dana White said he was going to strip Conor. Yeah, I hear you. That would be messed up. Mitchell says, yeah, that would be incredibly messed up. But, I mean, nothing surprises me when it comes to Conor McGregor. You know, they have bent over backwards to kiss this guy's ass. And, you know, this is no different right now. This is no different. This is crazy. But we got two cards going against each other. You got UFC 220, which is obviously an awesome card, one of the best cards they put together in a long time. Francis Ngannou and Stipe Miocic. And then you got Bellator 192 the same night. The good thing for the fans is Bellator decided to start their MMA event. Speaking of stripping Conor, fun fact, Connor's never defended a belt. I never realized that. Yeah, he hasn't. You know who else has never defended a belt? And I was thinking today is TJ Dillashaw actually didn't defend his belt and then called out Demetrius Johnson. So that's kind of interesting. Might be kind of setting a trend there because TJ Dillashaw is obviously also a very marketable fighter. You know, good-looking dude. It's hard to, whether you like him or not, you know, he's kind of got that all-American blonde, you know, look and everything. But let's go back to, you know, UFC 220 versus Bellator 192. If you don't get the 220 pay-per-view, you're going to still have a great night of fights in that Bellator. It's one of the best cards they've ever put on. Yeah, I think it's going into big money fights. Oh, for sure. Just like boxing. Titles don't matter in boxing. Nobody cares about titles in boxing. And, you know, for better or worse, that's definitely the way that the UFC is going. And, you know, they paid $4 billion, the new owners, and they want to make that money back. They proved it. Do you think that that Zuffa would have put Conor McGregor versus Floyd Mayweather in a boxing match? I don't know. But that was a big cash cow that I think hurt the UFC in the long run. That one will continue for many years. And Tony Ferguson is just getting screwed, and everybody can see it. But on the other hand, like I said, Bellator 192 is going to be a huge card, the main event from top to bottom. Aaron Pico is going to get his second fight in, and I think it's time for like boxing and MMA to start cross-promoting UFC versus Bellator. And they're doing it, on Saturday and another PRG. Yeah, they're doing it. They're doing it at the same time. I'm glad Bellator's not starting their main events until 9 o'clock. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a fight companion starting at least by 7 for the UFC 220 pay-per-view. And then the Bellator main events don't start until 9 p.m. And that's awesome. So most likely we'll be able to catch Chael Sonnen versus Rampage Jackson and the title fight between Douglas Lima and Rory McDonald, the two main cards. So that's going to be a great night. Probably be sitting here for, 4 hours watching some awesome fights. So that ends up being good for us. I'm really glad that they changed the time on that, even though UFC, tried to push him out of that spot, obviously with a huge card. And Francis Ngannou versus Stipe Miocic could go anywhere. Douglas Lima versus Rory McDonald. Rory McDonald may be taking Douglas Lima a little lightly. He's already said that he would jump in as a substitute in the heavyweight tournament. So I'm not sure why he's even talking about the heavyweight tournament right now. That seems kind of crazy. But, obviously he's a big favorite in that fight. Rampage Jackson versus Chael Sonnen. That's going to be interesting. You never know what Rampage is going to come in. Chael Sonnen has not looked good. Did not look good at 205. And as a heavyweight, obviously Rampage I think is going to be a lot bigger and stronger. But Rampage does not like to fight wrestlers. Chael Sonnen's one of the best wrestlers in the game. he had a hard time taking down bigger fighters. That was when he fought John Jones, but John Jones, was a superior wrestler on top of it. So that's not a fair comparison, but he was manhandled by the 205 John Jones, and he still would have lost to John Jones at 185, or if he, was a bigger guy, but he was obviously manhandled because of the size difference, and that could definitely play a factor. He does not want to get hit by a Rampage, I'll tell you that. Hopefully the prime Rampage comes in there, and it'd be fun to see a knockout. I know it's like when you see Chelson drag him to the ground, though, and just kind of ground and pound 3 rounds out and move on in the tournament, which I believe is pretty interesting. I do like the tournament at this point. Of course, you got Fedor Emelianenko, Frank Mir's always an X factor in there. Matt Mitrione's probably the favorite, but Roy Nelson can come out of nowhere to win this thing too. I mean, he can knock people out. He's got Superman power, In my opinion, the guy, just stops people. What about the undercard on this Bellator 192 fight, though? The bottom card, Aaron Pico is coming back. He's going to come back against a guy, Shane Kuchner. I did a promo video on here on that. If you don't know who Shane Kuchner is, you need to look this guy up. This guy's got a hell of a story. He won the Purple Heart. He's seen his friends die in the Iraq War. He was dismissed from the military in 2005 with PTSD. They put him on 13 different medications. Found MMA in about 2006. Got his ass whooped, in training a lot until he got better. Went to a bar after about a year, got in a $500 fight in a bar, and decided to quit his $20 an hour job driving crane at Oshkosh. Unfortunately, at the time, he was addicted to cocaine and alcohol. He lost his first 2 MMA fights, one by second-round knockout, one by armbar. He got better. He came back, finished his next 2 fights. Then he had a hiatus. If you're looking at his run, 2007, he'd fought 4 times. Doesn't fight till 2011. That's because on June 14th, 2009, he was in his hotel room and tried to commit suicide. Purple Heart recipient hero, just freebased on cocaine, did as much cocaine as he possibly could, washed it down with Jack Daniels, was choking on his own vomit. Luckily, the police happened to be looking for him on a warrant, knocked his door down, and found him passed out in his own puke. He wakes up in a hospital, handcuffed to a bed. They tell him that he'd been flatlined, which he'd been actually dead. What's up, Lucas? Thanks for tuning in, man. I was just talking about Shane Kuchner, Purple Heart recipient, and his, big story back to MMA. He's fighting Aaron Pico on the undercard of Bellator 192. But to get back to that, he'd flatline. He wakes up in the hospital, handcuffed to a bed. Damn, that is crazy. Mitchell said, yeah, it gets crazier. There's 2 guys from his MMA school come in, take him under his wing, say, if you touch drugs again, basically, as friends, we're going to fucking kill you. And sometimes that's what it takes. And supposedly, from that time forward, June 14, 2009, guy never touched drugs again. He's won 12 of his last 13 fights. One of the most amazing things about this, and interesting in this fight, is he's got 6 wins by submission of his 13 wins. And we all know Aaron Pico, his first fight, he lost by a guillotine choke. He's a wrestler. 3-time American NCAA division champion. Olympic alternate, but those guys are known to get caught in guillotine chokes. His first fight, what happens? 24 seconds in, he gets caught in a guillotine choke. Shane's got a couple finishes by a guillotine choke, and he's came back. He's fought his last 2 fights in World Series of Fighting. Came back from all the drug addiction and everything. He's been honored by the president, and he just won his last fight, World Series of Fighting, in New York City in Madison Square Garden. Now he's getting his chance at Bellator, and I think he's got a hell of a chance to beat Aaron Pico. Aaron Pico, again, of course, Bellator's been scouting him since he was in high school. While he was wrestling, they had signed him to a contract several times. They've thrown quite a bit of money at this kid. Lost his first fight. Second fight, he came back here recently. Knocked the guy out with a textbook perfect left hook. It's just an awesome left hook after losing that first fight to Zach Freeman. And it looked like he's really been working on his boxing. We've seen a lot of these wrestlers come in with the wrestling base and become great strikers. And that's, what this looked like in a microcosm. I know it was a very small sample of what it is, but the technique, the timing, the pivot, putting all his weight into that left hook was sensational. I thought it was, he looked very good in that fight. But I said he's going to be fighting a guy that comes into this cage with a lot of demons, and he might take him into some deep water that Aaron Pico doesn't know how to deal with. Even being a wrestling veteran, those guys work their ass off. But, you can't teach coming back from the dead, basically. He'd seen his friends die in Iraq. That's why he had PTSD, suffered with major depression for years. And, he's back fighting for something more than a title, more than a division. It's hard to put into words, but should read his story, watch my other video on him. He's a real American hero inside MMA, outside of MMA. I'm really glad that I looked this guy up, and I'm rooting for him against Aaron Pico. Nothing against Aaron Pico, but I got to admit, I am rooting for him. Next fight cast we're going to do, of course, is FS1. I know I'm jumping around a lot here, but there's a lot of stuff to cover this week. UFC Fight Night on a Sunday, January 14th. I am Rue, says Mitchell. Oh, 2 now. Yeah. Thanks for coming on, Mitchell. Yeah, I know I'm all over the place, man, but this is a stacked card. We're going to see, from the bottom, Michael Johnson in his hometown is on the undercard. Of course, he's pretty pissed about that. On the undercard, we're going to see Paige Savant versus Jessica Rose Clark. A lot of people were saying Paige Savant, is kind of a product of UFC marketing. Van Zandt, sorry, I mispronounced her name, but Paige Van Zandt, much like her boyfriend, Mr. Spiky here, that just landed a spot on the new Rocky movie, or Apollo movie, Creed. People say she's overrated. She's fighting Jessica Rose Clark. This is Jessica Rose Clark's debut in UFC 2, though, so I think this fight's going to be pretty close. I think Paige could pull it off. Could go either way. If anything, I think both these fighters come to fight and will put on an entertaining fight. Of course, in the co-main event, you're going to have Uriah Hall versus Vitor Belfort. Vitor said this is going to be his last fight. Been watching Vitor fight since he was 17 years old. Watched him take apart Tank. Watched him through the years. Probably a lot of steroids, yes. Obviously, the TRT that was legal at the time looks a lot different than when he was on TRT before. But I still have to give the guy props. He had a great career, and that's hard to deny. In my mind, that's hard to deny that he had a great career. I hope he doesn't get taken apart by Uriah Hall, but Uriah Hall is one of those guys that can really hurt you. He's got those spinning back fists, he's got spinning kicks, he's got the whole game, and I hope Vitor doesn't get hurt. Good luck to Vitor in his retirement. Thank you for all the memories, getting knocked out with the front kick from Anderson Silva, getting armbar submitted by John Jones. No. But to be serious, Vitor went through a lot. He's seen his sister killed through that time on MMA, a lot of different things. Always kept his faith. Seemed like a nice, positive guy. Had some drug issues, most likely, but there was a lot of people that were dirty before this new USADA training, and now we're just finding out about a lot of them. And unfortunately, a lot of them are coming out of the same country. coming out of Brazil. But let's talk about the main event on that card, since that's the next fight companion I'm going to be doing, is Jeremy Stephens and Doo Ho Choi, Korean Superboy. That is an incredible fight. Number 9 ranked Jeremy Stephens. What you do with Heathen if he wins, I feel like ever since... Oops. Sorry. With Heathen, I feel like if he wins ever since the Woo... the fuck is that guy comment TV? Really hope he gets a shot at Conor or something big. He's been winning. I don't know if he's ready for a shot at Conor yet, but Miocic versus Nagano. Yeah, we're going to talk about that some. And... what I think about what's going on with the disrespect of Stipe. But getting back to this, that's definitely like an after Christmas present from the fight gods, as I've said before. Doo Ho Choi versus Jeremy Stephens. Yeah, Jeremy Stephens has been around for a long time. Doo Ho Choi actually lands about twice as many strikes in a fight as Jeremy Stephens does, but he hasn't faced the competition that Jeremy Stephens has. These are two guys, I think, that are going to come right at each other, though. I'm going to be screaming that fight. I don't think this is going to go down to the ground much. These guys are just going to stand toe-to-toe. Early candidate for Fight of the Year. I'm calling it now. You know, that fight could definitely be Fight of the Year. I'm really excited about seeing that fight. Not so much about the Vitor Belfort Uriah Hall fight, because I feel like Vitor is going to leave the sport with a loss, but you know, it is what it is. And, you know, maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong. Darren Elkins versus Michael Johnson. Going against each other. Michael Johnson is pissed off to be on the undercard. He's the top of the undercard, but it's in his hometown. And, you know, he's been very vocal that he feels very disrespected. So he's super motivated for this fight. Obviously, he's still one of the, you know, most skilled guys in the division out there. Darren Elkins, you know, stats are pretty close for him to what they are with Michael Johnson. He gets a lot more takedowns, though. He averages about 3 takedowns a fight. Michael Johnson has great takedown defense, though. He gets less takedowns probably because he attempts less. He's better on his feet. I think Michael Johnson comes with one out of this one. Sorry, guys, my throat is dry. I had bronchitis, and I've been... Every time I think I kick this thing, it comes back. So drink some more beer. That's what the doctor said. But, yeah, let's get into UFC 220. I was talking about Francis Ngannou and Stipe Miocic. Stipe obviously being severely disrespected, I think, coming in as the underdog. Yeah. Coming in as the underdog, as the champion. And Francis Ngannou, you know, very little experience. He's got superpower. But Stipe's beaten all the guys Francis has beat. He beat him before, you know, before Francis got there. He just knocked out one of the greatest heavyweight fighters of all time, Fabricio Verdum. Probably the best heavyweight submission artist of all time. He's better than Frank Mir. He's better than, you know, probably anybody else. I don't know who. Let's face it, though, Francis is looking kind of scary. Dude does look scary. He walks in at 265. He walks around a little more. He cuts weight, and it doesn't look like he has any fat on him. Dude is scary for sure. Stipe is going to have the angles in that fight, I think, though. He's got better footwork. But something that he's going to have to deal with is Francis Ngannou, the way he throws from those unorthodox angles. Stipe works a lot on more orthodox boxing, and that uppercut against Alistair Overeem was anything but an orthodox angle. That was scary. And like I said, you know, lifted a 240-pound man off his feet. That's got to make Stipe sweat a little bit in his sleep. I don't care what he says. That is incredible. The face of Stipe looks scared. That's just me, though. That's just said. Well, Francis says you look scared. And Stipe says, I'm not scared. Francis says, don't lie. You scared. Don't lie. I loved it. Just tuning in. Thanks, Cap. How's it going, man? Sorry, I was a few minutes late with some technical difficulties at the stupid YouTube Live. Thanks for tuning in. We were just talking about all the cards that are coming up, all the fight companions we're going to be doing. We got of course, on Sunday, the Fight Night Live coming up. And then January 20th is going to be an awesome day because we get the UFC 220, Francis Ngannou versus Stipe. And then we get, starting at 9 o'clock, you got the Bellator 192 card. And we're going to get to see probably both of those main events. Rampage Jackson and Chael Sonnen. You see my main man, Twood, on the Joe Rogan podcast just now? No, I didn't. I was looking to see what was uploaded recently, and I didn't listen today. I listened to a little bit of Ariel. It just ended. I've actually been studying today. I was off. I've actually been kind of immersing myself in MMA today, so I don't have any of those missteps like I did last week. Like when I talked about T. Wood losing to Nick Diaz, that was a little embarrassing. Where that came from, actually, though, was I had just been listening to Joe Rogan. Hell yeah, brother, I'm feeling everything you're saying. Thanks, Nitro. Thanks for tuning in, man. But, yeah, no, it was actually somehow I mixed up with Rory McDonald had beat T. Wood, and now Rory McDonald, of course, over in Bellator, kind of, you know, he's one of the best 170-pounders out there, and he's probably going to beat Douglas Lima. No probs, says Nitro. Thanks for tuning in, man. But yeah, this UFC 220 card is stacked from front to back. I hope you guys are, you know, tuning in for both of those cards as I'm doing both of them. I mean, you got Gleison Tebow. Roy needs to get his ass back to the UFC, Mitchell says. He may after the Douglas Lima fight. He may also be overlooking Douglas Lima, though, because he said this week that if he beats Douglas Lima, or basically that he would beat Douglas Lima, and that he's open to be an alternate for the heavyweight tournament, which would be absolutely crazy. But with as old as those guys are, maybe he could come out of that. I don't know, but he needs to concentrate on Douglas Lima right now. He's no joke. That Rampage Jackson versus Chael Sonnen fight's also going to be incredibly awesome. He said he was going after that middleweight belt. After he might be able to beat anybody in Bellator in any weight class. Oh, you need to go to there? Okay.
If you're gonna go.
Okay. Oh, okay. 5 minutes. Okay. All right. Sorry, just getting a message from my wife. But yeah, that, like I said, that is a stacked card. You got Cormier and Ozdemir. I think a lot of people underestimate Ozdemir coming into this. I think he's got a good chance against Daniel Cormier, honestly. Ranked number 2. He hasn't been in the UFC a lot. Actually, I almost got a chance to see him with N1 Global. I had bought tickets to see him in Everett in the Comcast Arena, which is about 10 miles from here. Card was canceled. A couple weeks later, I see that he's signed by the UFC. I was a little pissed that I didn't get to see him fight, but you know, this is going to be pretty awesome to see him fighting against Daniel Cormier. And, of course, everybody thinks Cormier is going to destroy him. Volkan's no joke. So, and, of course, Daniel isn't either. But, you know, that's going to be a huge fight. I would not underestimate Volkan Ozdemir coming into that. And DC, of course, you know, one of the best work ethics in the game. I don't think he's going to underestimate him either. But, Volkan's got that striking. He's got a good takedown defense. It's definitely going to be a fight. It's not going to be an easy night for Daniel Cormier. I think it's going to be his toughest title defense, quite honestly. You know, and going back to one more fight I'm going to hit upon was the Bellator 192, though. That Chael Sonnen versus Rampage Jackson. I got to wrap this up. Because I have a prearranged date my wife was just telling me about. Chael Sonnen versus Rampage Jackson. That's going to be a huge fight. What Rampage Jackson are we going to see there? He could obviously knock Chael Sonnen out if he comes in and, you know, the Rampage of old. They're both at heavyweight. They're both probably going to be carrying a little around the midsection. Chael Sonnen did not look good at light heavyweight. Now he's going to be going up to heavyweight. But on the other side, you got Rampage that's never looked good against wrestlers. He said in the past he hates fighting wrestlers, actually. You know, he wants to fight strikers. He's like, stand up and bang with me. He's talked shit about wrestlers the whole time. And Chael Sonnen's one of the best wrestlers probably in MMA history. You know, he's a very good wrestler. He could easily take Rampage down and ground and pound him for 3 rounds and move on in this tournament. And this is a super interesting tournament. You know, the best news I seen this week, though, after I noticed that the Bellator 192 and UFC 220 card were lining up, is that Bellator moved that main event to 9 p.m. so we could do both cards, or the majority of Bellator 192. So I'm going to see you guys on Sunday for that Fight Night Companion. For Swanson and Ortega, that's going to be insane. I'm sorry, not Swanson and Ortega, that was the last one. Doi Hoi Choi and Jeremy Stevens, that's going to be a great fight. Vitor Belfort's retirement party. Hopefully he doesn't get knocked out by Uriah Hall, but that's what I'm calling. And then right after that, on January 20th, we're going to do UFC 220, and then we're going to back it up later on that night. As soon as UFC 220 is done, we're going to hit the main events for Bellator 192. It's going to be a great fight. Tell your friends, please, to subscribe. I'm looking to get to 200 subscriptions by the end of that Fight Companion on Sunday. I'm at 185. I need 15 more subscriptions. So please get your friends that are into MMA on there, or into anything else that I do. So you see I review some other things. It's been a great week. I talked about Conor McGregor. I guess I'll end on this. Tony Ferguson's getting fucked, possibly. It looks like Conor McGregor and Khabib Nurmagomedov have been sparring back and forth. Even Dana White, they've kind of been talking like maybe Khabib gets the next shot. At that point, what's the point of an interim title? How many people does Tony Ferguson have to beat? He beat Kevin Lee. I know Khabib was you know, more than impressive in his fight against Edson Barbosa, but if the interim champion doesn't get the next shot, what's the point of an interim championship belt? It's complete bullshit. Even having him fight Khabib Nurmagomedov first for the championship again would be complete bullshit. I'm glad Dana said he was going to strip Conor if he doesn't fight by March. I hope it's Conor and Tony Ferguson, and the winner of that fight's Khabib. And I hope it's either in Russia or Ireland. One of the two. That's going to be what's the most entertaining. Tell me what you guys think about that. Who do you want to see Conor fight next? Do you care? Would you rather see Tony Ferguson and Khabib? I'm going to end this one here, finish up this beer, and I actually got to go visit someone in the hospital, so that's why I'm ending this. But thanks for tuning in, everybody. I hope everybody has a great week. If you could give me a like or two before you get off of there. Lates, what's up, Seven? Hey, man, I actually got to leave, but I was just talking about Sunday. We're going to be having the UFC fight night. The Fight Companion, of course, Doi Hoi Choi. Thank you for the thumbs up. Doi Hoi Choi against Jeremy Stevens. And then that next Saturday, January 20th, we're going to do the whole UFC 220 card. The Bellator 192 doesn't start until 9 o'clock, so we should be able to catch both main events on that. And I'm looking to go over 200 subscribers by the end of that event. So 15 more subscribers by the end of January 20th. I know you guys are going to help me get the word out there. Anybody who's not subscribed, please subscribe. And have a great week, guys. I'll see you on Sunday.